Okay, Mrs.
That would
Coulter
probably
would
get
have
me
gotten
alone.
me in the exact way that she got Lyra. She's like, we're going to go to the north, and women don't usually get to do this.
Yeah.
So
I
she
was like,
kidnaps
wow.
you through girl power.
Yes.
She girl bosses
She
her
girl
way into a
bosses.
kidnapping.
She would have girl
Literally
bossed me.
gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss.
Yeah. Welcome back to Nostalgia Club, the show where sound designers gather together and talk about books and TV shows and movies that we loved as kids and whether they still hold up in adulthood. And today I'm so glad to say that we have a guest, but we are still sound designers. Hooray!
What?
I don't know.
My presence transformed you all into something
Yeah.
else. Or it would have, but then I was also a sound designer, so it
Yeah.
evened out.
We only have guests on this show who are sound designers. We were talking about this earlier when we were setting up mics, and we were like joking that you can only be a guest on the show if you can help us put the mics up. But anyways, our guest today is Isabella Miller, who has been a guest on our show before. Woo! Welcome
Hey,
back to the
everyone.
show.
Welcome back.
Hooray!
Yay.
What was the previous episode that Isabella was on? Was that the Mysterious Benedict Society?
Yes, and it was a great episode.
Ah, yes.
And you should all listen to it if you haven't.
Yeah.
Along with Ghost Inspectors, available wherever you get your podcasts.
That's true. You should definitely listen to Ghost Inspectors.
Getting the advertising out of the way, I see.
Yes, we were talking about The Golden Compass, the first book in His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. I really loved this book. I know Isabella really loved this book, and I was like, I would love it if Isabella was a guest because there's so much lore in this series that I could not possibly recount it all by myself.
So much lore.
Welcome.
But you're an expert. You were an expert on the lore.
I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I have read these books a few times, and I've watched the recent HBO show, which is very good, and you guys should check it out. And yeah, I'm very excited. Also, my name's Victoria, because I forgot to introduce myself earlier.
We're doing
And
great.
yeah, along with me are my usual co-hosts.
Hello, I'm Jino, but outside of America, I'm the Northern Lights.
That's a little book humor for you literary
So
types.
stupid.
I just love that specific detail because here, I mean, I don't know, maybe just because we like the sensational stuff. It's like the Golden Compass. Oh, what could it? Oh, look at this book cover, this classic book cover with the bears and the symbol reader and the city in the lights. And then it's like, what's your book about? Oh, alternate universe Earth with all this crazy stuff and magic and dust and there's a city in the lights. What do you call it? The Northern Lights. Oh,
Yeah.
you really bury the lead there, huh?
Pretty straightforward, though.
Yeah, I mean, it literally is about Northern
They
Lights.
talk about it a lot. And your name is...
My name is Michael.
We did it!
We're through
Off to
the
a
intro.
great start. No, I believe it was potentially renamed to match the other books because the following two books are The Subtle Knife and The Amber Spyglass. So perhaps because like for the American reading market, they like to have like a really cohesive, like these are all in the same series. So maybe they renamed it to The Golden Compass so that it follows the same like artifact is name of book.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Should we just jump right into it? Let's go with vibes first. So your general impression of the book upon reading it, either for the first time in Jino and Michael's case, or rereading it, or re-listening to it in Isabella's case.
I'm so curious to know what your guys' Wait, so both of you haven't read it before?
Nope.
But Victoria has. The vibes of the ending are pretty intense.
Yes.
Having not read it, was that what you guys were expecting, or?
Well, I can go first.
Yeah.
I basically went into this completely blind. I know there was a polar bear. That's about the extent of my knowledge. I tried to audiobook it first. I know you are an audiobook advocate. I'm also an audiobook advocate, but for some reason, this audiobook made it very difficult for me to get into the book. Maybe that's just because the beginning, like the first part, because the book's split into 3 parts. The first part's kind of slow and kind of lore heavy. It's a full cast audio drama. Is that the one you listen to as well?
Yeah. He narrates it, I think, Philip Pullman, right? Could be
Oh, wow.
wrong?
I don't know.
I'm not sure. I wanted to listen to the audiobook because I heard that it was a full cast audiobook. So I was like, I wanted to at least listen to a little bit of it, but I didn't get a chance to.
I remember listening to it in the beginning and it was read by the author, I think.
Yes, according to Google, Philip Pullman does narrate.
Yeah.
And then the other characters are read by actors.
Lyra's voice actor is amazing, and I do feel like she kind of like carried me through. Like, she has
Yeah.
incredible audiobook acting.
She did a very good job. Just for me, the pacing and the heavy exposition dumps that would happen every few chapters were like, ha, we've met a character who knows things. Quick, press the question button.
Yeah.
Question after question. We need to know what's happening. Reading it, I found, was a much more enjoyable experience. And it was a very enjoyable experience. Once we get into it, it doesn't stop. And oh boy, the scope of the story.
Yeah.
The interdimensional, international, multi-species magic warfare scope of the story is rollicking. And I was really pulled into it. I had a great time. I love bears in armor.
It's pretty great.
Hell yeah.
The animal bear in armor. Cut that.
And I love twinks out of armor. The animal twink.
Well, the twinkling northern lights, of course. That's what we meant.
Twink is short for Aurora Borealis, guys.
No, we have to cut this out. No.
Oh, man.
There's an animal society in this book, and it's a bunch of bears, and they have a king and government and rocket launchers or something. And I just love a good animal society, and they're really great, and they're polar bears.
The bear, yeah, those bears do have society, don't they? They have enough society to have artillery.
They have enough society to have artillery, but not enough society to like it.
They have opposable thumbs.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was so shocked when I was reading it, and it just casually mentions, yeah, they like have a society because the polar bears in this universe just happen to have opposable thumbs.
They're also all left-handed.
I did not know that.
That's like
Oh,
a random,
yeah.
it's like a thrown in line I think it's when,
I think it's in the middle of the fight.
yeah, it's in the middle of the fight, and Lyra notes that the king, what is his name? Like,
Yorko?
Yofer Raknison.
Yofer
Raknison. Raknison, yes.
It's Yofer and Yorick.
Yorick
yeah,
Burnison.
Yorick
Which
Burnison is
was-
the main bear.
Very confusing reading it because their names are spelled incredibly similar.
Yeah.
So you're like, and then one of them hits the other. Who's winning? I can't
Yeah.
tell.
To be honest, I skimmed that fight a little bit because I was just like, I know who's going to win. So the way Yofer Raknison dies, though, is pretty brutal.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, there's just a line where Lyra notes that all bears are left-handed. Just a given. And I was like, okay, cool.
I like to imagine for Lyra, it's a given that, well, because the only bear she's seen has been Yorick so far. So it's like, well, bears have thumbs, like people have thumbs. I guess bears, they talk and they have thumbs like people. And they're left-handed because why wouldn't they be left-handed?
Yeah.
This is the first bear I've met.
I know HBO has already adapted the show recently and well, but if they ever do it again in like 50 years or whatever, these bears got to give lots of thumbs up. There's a wonderful opportunity for all the bears to respond with a quiet, stoic thumbs up. Any sort of request.
That'd be really great. Yeah.
My vibes were much the same. The beginning of the book is interesting because it feels like Philip Pullman was like starting off his book and he was like, oh, there's so much the reader's got to understand before we jump into this. Well, they've got to be interested for more than just my esoteric lore. Poison plot. We'll put poison in the drink and then we'll, give a reason for Lyra and therefore the reader to like be interested in what is going to be like a 30-page long expository dump of stuff that includes things we're not even supposed to understand in that moment. So it's a bunch of like just seeds being dropped and you're like, okay, I wonder how this is going to go. And I really liked chapter 3, which is where we just get into like Lyra's life at the College of Jordan.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, the world building in this, all the things that they talk about, this idea of all these different like colleges and like church auxiliaries from this vague magisterium, like Kabbalistic sort of overarching like societal weight of like bureaucratic and theological like quasi-magical scientific involvement. That's just the background radiation, right? Like the main body of this thing is Lyra going to the north. Gotta get north. Gotta go find my Uncle Dad.
And also her best friend,
Yeah.
Roger.
Roger. Poor Roger.
Poor Roger.
But,
Roger is a very doomed by the narrative character.
He really is.
Yeah. Poor guy.
I really felt for him in that like final scene he gets where he's just taking a bath and Lyra's outside and they're just talking. And she says something along the lines of like, oh, I want to check the alethiometer, this thing that allows me to like divine some of the future. And Roger's like, nah, anything beyond 5 minutes has gotten bad since we started.
Yeah, that really hit me too.
Like, I'm just going to take it 5 minutes at a time. And Lyra's like, yeah, that's a good idea. No, Lyra, you should have checked the compass. Oh, well.
Yeah.
But my vibes were good. Much like Jino, I thought it was very funny how every few chapters it would be like you were in a point-and-click adventure game where you walk up to the character that knows things and you just have a list of questions you can click and you just go down the list of, what's this? What's this?
Yeah.
And then long paragraphs of explanation. But like the further I got in the book, the more eager I was for those chapters because I knew they would be coming at some point. And the further along we got, the more information we had. So I knew that those question and answer sessions would become like a lot more revealing and vital. So by the time we got the one at the end where Lyra sits down with Lord Asriel and is like, question and answer time, I was like, here we go, baby. Unfold it all for me.
Yeah.
I found it so refreshing because there's so many books where the kid character is just kind of like not gonna ask all the things that pop into their mind. It's almost like the author made them silent so that we would have to like figure it out in the plot. But in real life, it's like, or at least maybe for me, but like I would have been going up to everyone and being like, what's going on? What is this? What is that? Give me some definitions here. And Lyra is so that person. More than a lot of protagonists, I think. She just like really demands answers. And we get a lot, like more than if she hadn't asked, and it's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes along with Philip Pullman's overall theme and message of the series, which is that asking questions and seeking knowledge is a good thing.
Even if you gotta kill the child's extruded animal soul to do it.
Yeah.
But Lyra really carries this book for me because she goes from sort of this standard child running around doing stuff, telling tall tales as children are to do. And at first in the story, I'm not really engaged because she's a very interesting character, but she's not really doing anything. But then she starts grabbing initiative throughout the book until she's literally chasing it down on the back of a bear. It's very, I don't know if heartwarming is the right word because so many bad things happen, but you really root for Lyra because she's being so proactive by the end. Of course, you always want your characters to be proactive in your stories, but it's really, I'm trying to avoid using the word satisfying because I use it in every single episode. But it is
satisfying.
It is satisfying to watch her go, no, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to sneak around. I'm going to do the thing the reader wants to do and figure out what the heck is going on with this dust and this alethiometer and these freaking northern lights.
Yeah, I think it's because, in particular, Lyra, as a young child, normally would have almost no control in this situation.
Yeah.
It's like her best friend has been kidnapped. She has no money, no car, no nothing. Like, she doesn't even have parents who could support her if she wants to go off in search of her friend. But she still comes up with a plan on how she's going to get there regardless. And so it makes you really, like Jino said, really root for her.
Not to mention that she's like a young girl in this like very patriarchal. Yeah, I know you were mentioning that earlier.
Yeah. The society that this world is built in is, how do I say, it's kind of dark. It's very controlled by the magisterium. Like going back to what Michael said about the pursuit of knowledge.
I think you said that.
I said it, but then you sort of like
I made a joke
it.
about it. I made a joke about killing the extruded animal soul of a child.
Yeah.
You're the one who said the coherent thought.
Well, I
think, or was it Isabella?
I was just saying Lyra likes to ask questions, and Victoria was like, that's the point.
Yeah.
The both of you made the point. Please proceed.
Yes. Basically, like the magisterium, they fear people's understanding of things, and they want to control what they understand. So on the issue of dust, which is dust with a capital D, it's this particle that researchers discovered, and then Asriel is interested in exploring more of it, but the church doesn't like that, so they're trying to stop him. It's like one of those things where they want to like know a bit more about it, but they also are not actually wanting to understand it because they're afraid of it.
Yeah, they just want to control it by
Yeah.
knowing enough about it that they can keep it contained.
Which is why they go about doing these experiments on kids where they are essentially trying to prevent dust from impacting people. It's this whole complicated thing, which we'll get into, but
that was the part that I absolutely forgot about as a child. And then reading it again as an adult, I was like, whoa, with a more grown-up understanding of like some of the history of, I guess, the way that religion can sometimes have these negative effects when it's institutionalized in a very powerful way, especially against like children, was really like, I had no idea this was all in here.
yeah, it's a lot. He gets into some really serious topics, even for a kid's book.
Isabella, do you want to talk a little bit more about your history with the Golden Compass? Because you have, from what I hear, a storied history with this series.
Sure. I don't know if it's storied, but I definitely grew up with this a lot. So I think I read the book before I saw the movie, but something that was part of my like childhood, which I'm super like grateful for and have so many fond memories of, is that my dad used to read books out loud to me and my brother every night as we were going to bed. And so a lot of my core childhood books are like through his like voice reading those out loud. And I think that's why I still love audiobooks. Like that's my like first exposure to like these kinds of stories. And The Golden Compass was one that he read to us. And then I know that the movie came out around the time that we were reading it. So I think I was definitely less than 10 years old. And then we watched the movie, and I didn't really know this as a kid, I think, but then I rewatched the movie as an adult. It's like actually a very poor adaptation.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of bad, but I like loved it as a kid though, because the demons are actually really well done CGI. There's a lot of fun stuff. The bear fight is crazy, and who doesn't want to have a shape-shifting animal companion as a kid? Like, I know that me and my brother and my friends would play and pretend to have, you know, or talk about like what would our demon have been.
You mentioned in the last episode you were on with the Mysterious Benedict Society, you were in, at some point, like an ongoing book club activity group as a kid. Did Golden Compass ever get wrapped up into that endeavor?
I really wish it had. This was one that we definitely read separately from that. But other ones were that you guys have talked about on the show, like Goose Girl.
Oh, wow.
We talked about, we read in that book club.
That's great. I guess it could make a little sense because there is a lot going on in the Golden Compass that I could see maybe kids would have to self-select.
It'd be a lot for like a book club to dive into.
Yeah.
How old were you when your dad read these to you?
I know that we moved out of the house that I have memories of him reading it to me when I was 10. So it was definitely before 10, which I feel like is really intense. Like, I think that's why reading it as an adult, these themes hit me a lot harder, is that some of the stuff, particularly, I guess, about institutionalized religion being used to harm children and women and stop the progression of science and be used as a tool of control rather than, like, the spiritual thing that it should be and, like, the meaningful connection to your community that it should be, was very powerful to take in, I think, as an adult. That definitely went over my head when I was little.
Yeah. I would say I feel similarly because I read these books when I don't remember how old I was when I read them. I don't even know how I discovered these books, to be honest. It's just in the void of, I assume I was like at least in middle school or high school when I read this. So I was a bit older and I read all 3 books, didn't watch the movie because I heard it was bad. So
Nice.
It was bad, but it was fun. It was
I'm sure
fun.
it was. Yeah. But I was in my phase of the books are better than the movie.
Yeah.
So I didn't watch the movie and I still haven't. But I did recently watch the HBO show, like I mentioned. And that is a really fantastic adaptation, mainly because they had time to get into all of this. Like, if you think about it, I almost don't blame the movie for being a poor adaptation because there's so much that happens in this book that you couldn't possibly fit it into a 2-hour movie. You would lose a lot of the ongoing themes and storylines that are layered throughout the book. When the show came out and was announced, I was like, oh, right, I remember reading these books and I really liked it. So then I endeavored to reread some of the books before I watched the show. I don't think I got all the way through to the end, but I did read Wikipedia and refresh my memory on some of the plot points. And I really, really, really enjoyed the show. And I highly recommend it to anyone, if you are like intimidated by reading all these books, just watch the show because you'll still get a really great experience of it. It's great because it adds a lot to the story. We get to dive more into Mrs. Coulter's character and some of the other storylines that are sort of like background. Like they're mentioned, like Philip Pullman obviously had ideas for stuff that was going on in the background, but because you're in Lyra's point of view, you don't get to see it. But in a show, you get to go more in depth into like how the magisterium works and what's going on behind the scenes with Mrs. Coulter and the General Oblation Board and all that. So that's really interesting. And then the things that they did change, I also still appreciated. Like, I thought they were well thought out for modernizing the show a little bit and also adjusting some of the themes to comment on more modern day issues. So I thought that was good. And then overall, it was just a very faithful adaptation to the book.
Nice.
That's great. When I heard you say adapting the show for like a more modern, I was like, they give Lyra a cell phone. No, I'm kidding.
I think our cell phones are our demons today.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
Ooh. No, they don't modernize it in that sense. They modernize the themes that are...
I'm just imagining like this institution in the biting north, like the dark corners of the world, and it's like, what are they doing up there? They're taking phones from the children! They're taking their phones. No!
Yeah, that'd be really funny. The general aesthetic of the show is really great, though.
Yeah, it's really cool. And the intro theme song is really like...
Yeah, and they dive into the witches more, which is awesome.
Ooh.
Because the witches
are kind of nuts.
I love to have a consulate. As soon as I heard that, I'm like, this book's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah.
Also obsessed with the fact that her Serafina Pekkala's pelican demon coming
He's a goose.
like a goose demon.
Yeah.
Coming to visit, what's his name? Is it Fa Decorum who's in love with her? The way that this goose comes to him and he's like so like, oh my God, I've been reunited with my lover. And it's like a goose. And the goose is like giving him messages through her was like, wow, this is world building.
Yeah.
It's really great. Yeah, they get to dive more into the Witches Society and then like Serafina Pekkala as a character, which I think she's one of my favorite characters. She's just like a cool character, so I would say she's
really
one of my
cool.
favorites. Also, Lin-Manuel Miranda is Lee Scoresby.
Yes.
That was a wild choice.
That's kind of nuts.
He actually does pretty well as the character. I just thought it was really funny.
I can see it.
Lee Scoresby as a character concept in general is a wild choice to me.
He's from the country of Texas.
Yeah, he's from Texas. He uses Wells Fargo Bank.
That honestly, that really broke my immersion. I was like, Texas, whiskey, Galveston, Wells Fargo Bank.
Yeah.
All right.
That was really funny. Before we get too deep into discussion, should we do a plot summary? I literally, as I was reading, I wrote down... I wrote down plot points that I felt like I should cover in a plot summary.
Okay.
So I will endeavor to be efficient.
I believe in you.
Thank you.
Endeavor to efficiency.
There's still a lot of plot points.
The motto
but,
of the
it's better,
consistorial court of discipline.
Yeah,
it's
Lord
better than
Asriel
me
would say that.
meandering to give a plot summary. Okay, so The Golden Compass follows a girl named Lyra who grows up in a world where every human has a animal counterpart called their demon. The main thing that's important to know is that when you're a kid, your demon can shapeshift at will. So your demon can be a bird and then it can turn into a rat and then it can turn into a bear or whatever. I actually don't think they ever turn into bears, maybe because bears are like an actual thing, but that's besides the point.
Could turn into a humpback whale.
Yeah. And then once
I don't know.
you reach puberty, your demon settles into a singular form. So after that, your demon can't shapeshift anymore. And usually within the lore of the world, whatever your demon settles as sort of reflects something about your personality or your character.
And the demon is like a manifestation of your soul.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
You can
literally
feel
a part
their
of your
pain,
soul.
You can share your thoughts with them and you can't get too far away from them.
Mm-hmm. Lyra grows up in Jordan College playing with her best friend Roger, who is a kitchen boy. As Michael mentioned, one day she sneaks into a meeting where no women are allowed, but she wants to get a view of her uncle Asriel because she hardly gets to see him. And she saves him from almost being poisoned by the master of Jordan College. in her hiding, she hides in basically like a wardrobe. She gets to witness the meeting where Lord Asriel presents his findings on a particle called dust. After that, she sort of forgets about it a little bit because she's like, that's none of my business. And she continues on with her daily life. But then there's whisperings of children disappearing in various towns. People call them the Gobblers. Unfortunately, one day Roger gets kidnapped. And so Lyra is determined to find Roger and also go up north where she knows that her uncle has traveled to go and study. So that's kind of her main goal. But in between, she's sent to live with Mrs. Coulter, who is sort of adjacent to the magisterium. She's definitely a person of importance, similar to Lord Asriel. And at first, she's very taken by Mrs. Coulter because she's one of the first strong female influences in Lyra's life. And so Lyra goes to stay with her. Mrs. Coulter promises to let her help with her research, and so Lyra thinks if she goes with Mrs. Coulter, then she can go to the north eventually. Another important thing to note is before she goes to live with Mrs. Coulter, the master of Jordan College gives her this device called the alethiometer, and she doesn't really know what to do with it, but she's determined to figure it out.
He says it can tell the truth.
Yes, but she doesn't know how. She doesn't know how to read it yet. Pretty soon after she's there, she starts realizing that Mrs. Coulter is not as good of a person as she seems to be. And in particular, one day Mrs. Coulter's demon, who is a golden monkey, attacks Lyra's demon, Pantalaimon, or Pan for short. And that really traumatizes her because, like Isabella said, she can feel the pain of her demon. So being attacked by someone else's demon is really bad and terrible. So she runs away. She also runs away because she learns that Mrs. Coulter is involved in the kidnapping of children. She has formed something called the General Oblation Board.
The GOB.
The GOB, which essentially is doing something involving kidnapping children and experimenting on them. So Lyra is like, I don't want anything to do with that because they kidnapped Roger, so I'm going to get out of here.
And they're in the north.
Yes, and they're in the north.
Where she was going anyway.
So she's like, great, everything is pointing me to the north. So I got to get there somehow. So she runs away. She takes shelter with, I don't know if
the name you're worried about? Well, it seems like, because they're called in the book Egyptians.
Yes.
Which seems like you took the word Egyptian and then chopped the E off, but also that you took a word that we no longer use in reference to the Romani and just sort of changed the end of it.
Yeah.
So,
but they also live primarily in the British Isles?
Yes, they're sort of like nomadic
elsewhere?
people.
Yeah.
They live in boats and they travel around and they have their own sort of separate society.
Yeah.
They're kind of not taken seriously by the law in that they there's a point mentioned that more of their children have been kidnapped than anyone else because they can't really get a lawyer. They're not really taken seriously by the government of the land that they're in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an alternate universe world, and some locations and nations have one-to-one equivalents, and some don't.
Yeah.
And I think the Egyptians are sort of an amalgamous, nomad boat people.
Yeah.
They don't really stand for another real life people.
I noticed a lot of their demons were birds. As it was listing them, it seems like they kind of...
Yeah. Which makes sense if they're traveling all the time. It makes sense that their demons would also be free-spirited and less tethered to the ground.
Yeah. But definitely not all of them. There was definitely cats and other things.
They also do mention that there's someone whose demon settled as a dolphin. And unfortunately, he can never leave the ocean. Which is a little rough.
He
Yeah.
loved the sea. He loved the sea too much.
Yeah, but then now he's sad that he can't leave the sea.
He's like Davy Jones.
Yeah. Definitely some pros and cons to whoever your demon settles as.
I was so worried about I know somebody has a butterfly. And if your demon dies, you die.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's definitely some demons that
some
are a lot easier to have than others.
Demons that are flies. Someone just accidentally squashes that and you're dead.
Also,
if you have an amphibian, I feel for you.
The book casually mentions that all the servants in Jordan College have dog demons.
That was interesting to me. I was like,
That was so unsettling.
Yeah.
I am not a fan of that.
I was like, I don't know how I feel about that one.
This is where you start going into the nature of the society and how people where does the underclass of people that live in and around Jordan College, which is like, Jordan College is kind of like a large operation.
Yeah.
Like, where are these people pulled from? Are they raised in such a way? And wrapped into whatever their personality inlaid is also a set of expectations and personality traits that they adopt that then compels their demons eventually to settle into more
because it is implied that some of your life experiences can impact what your demon settles as. For example, going back to the guy whose demon turned into a dolphin, at one point Pan turns into like a porpoise and starts swimming with the fish, and Lyra gets really afraid that he'll enjoy it too much and settle as that. Yeah. Even though she can feel how excited he is to like be free and swim in the ocean, she's like, but don't love it too much.
And same with Lord Asriel, because his is a snow leopard, and he spends most of his career like adventuring through snowy landscapes.
Yeah.
And there's, what is it? The Tartars?
Yeah,
there's
all
like that.
wolves.
Yeah, there's some military unit. Yeah, where all of their demons are wolves.
Yeah. So it would make sense, like, if you were born into like a lower class and you were just taught that you're just going to be a servant your whole life, that could impact what your demon turns into.
Yeah, it was intense.
Like, it would kind of suck if you were a servant and then your demon was a bird and then you spend most of your day in the kitchen and then your demon just has to like be indoor. Like, this is my thinking, I guess. So.
It's the kind of book where like that could happen though.
Yeah.
Like, I love all of the sort of mini offshoots of like, here's some fun person who we're going to mention once and never bring back. Like, they mention one of the guys who works in the kitchen who we never even see. They're like, he's one of the rare individuals where his demon is the same sex as him.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, trans representation in the Golden Compass for a second? Like, hello? But there's so many kind of just like one-off mentions of interesting quirks that happen with people's demons. And they're not even major characters, but they're in there.
I heard that because Philip Pullman recently has been writing a new series called the Book of Dust trilogy. And so far there's 2 books out and there's a 3rd one coming out this year. And apparently that one gets into a lot more different people and their demons and the different relationships that can result from this very unique relationship with yourself, essentially. Yeah. Okay, so continuing. Lyra takes shelter with Egyptians and she tells them what she learned about the General Oblation Board. And so they decide to take a group up north to go and rescue the kids. And at first, Lyra isn't allowed to go because she's a young girl and they don't feel like it's safe for her to go. But she learns how to read the alethiometer and predicts the death of one of the Egyptians right before he dies. And so they're like, okay, we should probably take you with us. Just as like, it feels like you'll be helpful, and it also feels like there's something going on here that's maybe beyond us, and it seems like you're meant to be on this journey. So she goes with them north. We encounter the witches, and the reader learns that Lyra is part of a prophecy where the fate of the world is on her shoulders, but she can't know anything about it. So she's meant to fulfill the prophecy without knowing that she is fulfilling the prophecy. Once we learn that, that sort of like is the undercurrent for the rest of the book and the rest of the series, because once again, Lyra can't know that that's going on. Along her journey, she meets Yorick Burnison, who is a bear, a polar bear, and she helps him get his armor back. She meets the witches, like we said, who tell her about the existence of different worlds. She also meets Lee Scoresby, who's an aeronaut, and he has a hot air balloon, and he just travels the world, and he's like a hired contractor. And he joins the Egyptians in their search for the kids. Shortly after meeting Yorick, she hears that there's a ghost child in one of the neighboring towns that they're close by, so she asks him to take her there, and that's where she meets a severed child for the first time. That's when she realizes that the General Oblation Board is essentially severing children from their demons, and then when the experiment ends in failure, they are sent just to wander the wilderness, which is really terrible. And they become sort of listless and not themselves anymore. And the one she encounters is always looking for his demon. And shortly after she finds him and brings him back to the Egyptians, he passes away because he no longer has his demon. Then Lyra is captured by the General Oblation Board, and she's brought to what is called the experimental station. She does find Roger there, so that's exciting, and she starts coming up with an escape plan because she knows that the Egyptians are close by, and that if she can get the kids out of the building, the Egyptians should be able to rescue them. Just as she's starting to come up with a plan, Mrs. Coulter shows up. And so then Lyra has to try and hide from Mrs. Coulter, but she is spying on the scientists at the experimental station, and she learns about a new machine they've developed that will make severing faster and maybe more effective, and she's discovered. And then she is almost severed from Pan, which is a really terrifying sequence.
Oh, yeah.
And then Mrs. Coulter saves her. So after that, she has to like pretend that she doesn't know everything that's going on and that she still trusts Mrs. Coulter. She makes up a story that she was captured at the party that Mrs. Coulter was throwing, and she ended up here, and so Mrs. Coulter saves her. And Lyra asks a bunch of questions about, like, why are you doing this? And Mrs. Coulter gives her sort of half answers. She does explain why she thinks severing is important, which is basically...
She's doing the double truth thing. And
like, basically, the magisterium believes
answers.
that dust is the origin of sin. And so they believe that if they sever kids from their demons before dust settles on them, dust starts settling on you when your demon settles, then dust can't harm you.
Yeah. In the very beginning, when she's interrupting that war meeting, Lord Asriel's showing his video presentation. Not video. He's got like a projector film slideshow. And he's like, these are photos taken with a camera that's never been used before in the North.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a person who's got dust swirling all around them, and it's an adult. And then there's a figure next to them who has no dust swirling around them.
That's
who's
a child.
Smaller.
Yeah.
And he said, this is a child, this is an adult. It settles on adults. This is proven with this photo.
Yeah. Lyra does succeed in helping the kids escape. They're all rescued by the Egyptians, and then she heads to Svalbard to find Asriel, who is her father. She learns halfway through that Lord Asriel is her father and
Surprise.
Mrs. Coulter is her mom, which is crazy.
Yeah.
She goes to Svalbard, which is the land of the bears, to find Asriel. She helps Yorick defeat Iofur Raknison to become the new king of the bears and reclaim his proper title. And she learns that Asriel is also experimenting on dust. He's like a prisoner at Svalbard, but he's convinced the bears to basically build him an entire laboratory. So he's just been up there living the life, like doing his research. Like he's like, I wanted to be here anyways. So great. She learns, unfortunately, too late that Roger, who goes with her to Svalbard, is like the child that Asriel has been waiting for, because he has learned that the energy that is released when a child is severed from their demon can be used to power his machine. So he severs Roger from his demon. Roger dies. Sorry, Roger. Goodbye. And he opens up a portal in the sky to this world that he's been seeing in these northern lights. And at the very end, Lyra decides that she's going to follow.
And I wasn't totally sure. It seems like Lord Asriel is intending to go on a Grover's Mad Quest to Kill God style adventure.
That's essentially it. Like, Asriel says that he wants to find the origin of dust and destroy it.
It's sort of weird because when he's talking to Lyra, he's like, the church being what it is could only create an explanation for the existence of dust, being that it is like the manifestation of original sin settling on human beings. And yet at the same time, he's like, I also believe that dust is bad and is responsible for suffering and death. And then he says a pretty insane line, which is, death is going to die.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I'm alone with you in this house at the edge of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the very last things that Lyra thinks before she goes through the portal is, if Lord Asriel thinks dust is bad, it must be good.
Yeah, she's basically like, she's seen all these people do terrible things. So she's seen the Magisterium create the General Oblation Board, which is hurting these children. She's seen Mrs. Coulter be responsible for that. And she's seen Lord Asriel kill her friend in front of her. And she's like, if all these people think dust is bad, maybe it's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
So she sets out to find the source of dust before Asriel can destroy it. And that's the start of her main journey.
So then the next two books take place in this alternate world.
Many alternate worlds, actually.
Ooh,
yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far into the other two books because it gets crazy. Like, at one point they meet angels and the Almighty.
Yeah, we'll stick with this one.
Yeah, but but briefly, the world that Azriel sees in the Northern Lights is a city called, I don't know how to pronounce it exactly, like Citagaze, or I forgot how they pronounced it in the show. But basically it's...
Baltimore. No, I'm kidding.
Basically, it's a world that is the bridge between Lyra's world and our world.
Because they're kind of stacked, right?
Yeah. And then there's also many other worlds that they learn how to access because Lyra meets this boy named Will who becomes like a secondary protagonist in the series, and Will becomes the bearer of the subtle knife, which is a knife that can cut through to different worlds.
Ooh,
so he literally just goes
cool.
slice, and then he can go to a different world. And then he can close them too.
That's handy to have for the plot, I'm sure.
Yeah. And so after he gets the subtle knife, we go to so many different worlds. That's not the only way to get to other worlds, because in Citagaze, there's already a portal. Like, Lyra isn't able to open one. She just finds that there already is one open to Will's world, which is our world. And so there are also portals that have been opened in various locations. And if you stumble across it, you could accidentally stumble into another world.
So I am curious, after that plot summary, for both of you who have read the book before, it feels like we get a lot of the information up front in this book, but because we're seeing it from sort of Lyra's perspective, sort of this like pseudo-omniscient, but mostly Lyra's perspective, we don't understand the significance of any of the information until the end. So was going back and rereading this book a totally different experience for you, now with all the context of who Azriel is and what he means to do, and who Coulter is and what she means to do?
Yeah, it's kind of wild because I didn't remember a lot of the kind of like ending themes and maybe some of the like higher level stuff related to Dust. But I did know that Dust was related to the Daemons and that it also was related to alternate universes, and it was what was in the Aurora Borealis. Like, I remembered all of that from being a kid. And then when I was reading the beginning of the book and Lord Asriel was explaining a bunch of the stuff with the slideshow, I was like following all of it. And then I was kind of like, oh, silly Lyra, like just as a kid and doesn't know these things yet. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to know these things yet. I just remember this. Like, yeah, I was really surprised, like, how much is actually revealed, like, in the beginning.
Yeah, because, like, in retrospect, it's very clear that Azriel is bad.
Yeah.
And that the Master is trying to save Lyra from both Azriel and Mrs. Coulter.
Yeah.
But from Lyra's perspective, they're kind of pitted against each other, and so one of them must be good and one of them must be bad.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Coulter is so obviously evil that Azriel, in turn, must be good. That's the only alternative. But it's fascinating looking back and going, oh, they're both evil, and the Master was right to try to kill them.
I do think that Lyra is attracted to the idea of Lord Asriel because he's so against the grain. Like, they're kind of in this presentation and they're like, no, like, don't talk about that. And he's like, I'm going to talk about it, you know? And I think that that is in line with, like, so much of what makes Lyra Lyra. And she feels so stifled by, like, being in Jordan College. And Lord Asriel's, like, the exact opposite. He can go wherever he wants.
Yeah,
like,
she has an adventurous spirit, so she loves... I think she really wants his life, essentially.
she absolutely...
Even though she has no idea what he's studying.
She
He's
wants
just like,
his
he's doing
life.
cool stuff.
And she wants his approval.
Yeah.
And I do think that that really, like, is so exciting to her that she kind of doesn't consider any of the implications of it. And Lord Asriel, like, is such a bad guy that even being her dad, like, when she shows up in the prison, he's, like, got this horrified look on his face, and then he sees Roger behind her and he calms down. He was so ready to use her.
Yeah, he was like, if this is the only kid I got, I guess it's my kid.
He was about to have that Thanos moment where he's like, this is all of my work coming back to haunt me in a moral dilemma that I will inevitably have to pursue.
Yeah, he was ready. He was ready to do
I
it.
have no choice but to kill a child. Can no one stop me?
And weirdly, I almost felt more sympathy for Miss Coulter by the end of it than it's almost like they flipped, where, like, at the beginning it was like, oh, Lord Asriel's great, Miss Coulter's bad. They're still both bad, but I kind of...
Miss Coulter's more pitiable.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
You're kind of like, the bar is so low that it's like, at least she's not willing to sacrifice Lyra for science.
She does stop them from cutting off Lyra's
Yeah.
demon, even though she's super ready to do that to all the other children.
Yeah, but she's like, not my kid.
Yeah.
The character work in this book is really phenomenal.
I actually really, because in the book, we don't get a lot of Mrs. Coulter, actually, but in the show, they really dive into her character, and the things that they explore and add to her character are so good that it made the experience of reading this book again really great. Because then I had like the added layers of like, oh, this is what is going on in Mrs. Coulter's head during this, and etc.
That's what a good adaptation should do. It should enhance the original material.
Yeah.
Not replace it.
The interesting thing about Mrs. Coulter is that she can be further away from her demon than most people. Because like we said, it's really painful for people when they're separated from their demon. Like at one point, Lyra tries to get a short distance from Pan so he can eavesdrop. And she's like, no, I can't do it.
And then they like come back together and they're like hugging and shaking.
Oh, another thing that's really taboo in this world is it's really taboo for you to touch someone else's demon.
It's like, I was shocked by how hard they committed to that taboo.
Yeah.
Because when they find the ghost child who's got, what's his name again? He's got a name. Tony Costa.
No.
Macaros or something.
Tony Macaros.
Oh.
Tony Costa is Billy Costa's.
Isn't it Billy Costa?
Billy Costa is the kid that gets taken.
But isn't Billy Costa who they find?
Maybe
I think the show condenses them into one character.
That's possible. Yeah.
That's probably it. Because Tony Macaros, if that is his name, Tony, he features in a whatchamacallit, like
it's
a
like
vignette.
It's like a rare episode or a rare chapter where it's not from Lyra's point of view. Wow. Speaking. Hello.
Yeah. Well, Tony, I guess.
Yeah, Tony Macaros.
Gotcha. I think they make it Billy Costa in the show.
That makes sense to me because
Well, you got to condense.
Yeah.
There's so much.
That's his only like Lyra does find Billy Costa at the same time she finds Roger, and it's just like he's saved, hooray! But then it's like really sad in the show. Yeah, because his poor mom.
Yeah. Okay, but the thing
dramatic.
The thing I was gonna say about him is when they find Tony, and he's got no demon, he's hugging a dead fish.
Yeah.
To like feel like he has his soul again. It's horrific.
Yeah.
And there's a part where they're riding together with him. Lyra's like almost afraid to touch him because she kind of sees him as like a corpse. And Pantalaimon is like, I really want to like go cuddle up to him and comfort him, but it would be too taboo for me to do it.
Yeah. And not only is it taboo, like, because there's a really terrible moment when Lyra is in an attack and then one of the enemies grabs Pan.
Yeah.
It's so, what is the word?
Violating.
It's really violating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote down the quote from it. I almost don't want to read it. It's like
It's really visceral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little too real. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's basically like if someone like reached into your soul and like grabbed it and then just like held on to it and they're just like there.
Yeah.
I can think of metaphors that can be left to the reader to discover for themselves.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
It's I'm trying to remember. I think at one point in the show, this happens in the second or third books, but I think at one point Mrs. Coulter does grab Pan and Lyra is like, what the... Don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just adds to the overall like uneasiness about Mrs. Coulter.
Do we find out more about her ability to be distant from her demon? Is it that she's part witch? Because the witches can do that freely.
Yeah.
Or is it that she's so locked into her like evilness that feeling of being distant is like fine for her?
I have thought about this a lot because when I was watching the show, they explored a bit, but they never say for sure. Like there is still a lot left up to interpretation. I don't think she's a witch. I think it's different because witches can be separate from their demons for a different reason. But I think for Mrs. Coulter, the implication is that she feels the pain when her demon is away from her, but she puts up with it.
Wow.
So she's built different is the explanation.
And there's also she actually mistreats her demon in the show. Like she slaps him and at one point he tries to like hold her hand and she like hits him away.
So she hates herself.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Now I almost have a problem with that because that'll make me feel bad for her demon and by proxy her. And in the book, I was like, I hate this monkey, dude.
The monkey, like...
This monkey is a friggin'
You definitely
mess.
feel a little bit bad for the monkey in the show because he just like looks really sad when she like hit. But at the same time, like they are both vicious and aligned in their goals.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, like, the monkey is the manifestation of Miss Coulter's, like, pure sadism. Like,
Exactly. Like, when she's just by herself, she can hide her true intentions a bit more, but the monkey is just in the corner, like,
just, like,
glaring at
feral.
Pan.
Yeah. And when he
Yeah.
does attack Pan, finally, I think he kind of is like relieved
He's
that
like,
he
yes,
finally gets to do
finally,
this.
yeah.
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 As a comparison, then, Pan almost is like a mystery to me in a way, in terms of his, like, he seems kind of just sort of there a lot of the time. He has a perspective, and it shows up, I think, a lot more earlier in the book where he's a little more like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah,
and
Pan
Lyra's
is,
like,
at the start, is more just like Lyra's conscience.
yeah, which is an interesting comparison because Lyra is such a ragamuffin.
It seems like a lot of times people's demons kind of like counteract part of them. So like Mrs. Coulter, if she's very cruel, her demon is almost like sympathetic because he's being abused by her, at least in the show. And then like with Serafina Pekkala or something, she's glowing in a way when you think of her, and then her demon is like a plain goose. Maybe Lyra is like so adventurous that Pan has to like
Rein it in.
he's like nervous, and I think that stops her from getting into too much trouble.
But there
Makes
are the
sense.
moments in the book where Lyra is the nervous one, and Pan's like, remember the plan, calm down.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the book, it's almost like he represents her willpower, like her drive to continue the quest, because she becomes incredibly capable by the end of the book. She straight up lies to like a bear monarch and convinces him to like enter a death duel.
Yeah.
And Pan is there the whole time, sort of like whispering like advice in her ear. She's like a sinister little, or he's like a sinister little like advisor on her shoulder, except, you know, for good or whatever. Literally, demon on the shoulder.
Yeah.
So it does feel like towards the end, like he switches from like timid to brave. I don't know if that reflects
think
her.
Pan's character development is similar to Lyra's, where at the start, he represents the part of her that is unsure of what to do, how to manage the circumstances that she's in. And as she gains more confidence, Pan also gains more confidence. And I think it makes sense that Pan's character, of all the demons that we see, he's the least fleshed out because he's still settling.
Yeah.
He's still very fluid, like Lyra's figuring out who she is, Pan is figuring out who he is. So it makes sense that he's just kind of doing whatever Lyra's doing, and then he's along for the journey, you know?
It's interesting. The more I think about it, again, I think goes back to the character work with, with all the characters, but with Lyra, since we spent so much time in her head, there is that third chapter where it's just it's literally called Lyra's Jordan.
Yeah.
And it's like her world, her view of reality and her experience in it. Like, she is uncomplicated in terms of how she sees things. Like, sure, there are complications. The kids have this whole world of like wars and internecine, like conflict between the colleges and the classes of people and like folks who roll in at different times of the year. And she goes on adventures with Roger and all that, but she doesn't have to be afraid of anything. And she can be staunch and defiant of Jordan College's attempts to try and sort of settle her in any way. When I think of her like in the court of the bears, basically, she's almost entirely like, oh man, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
This is pretty messed up. And then when she does her best, when she is herself, she can think up a plan and then know how to treat that plan in a way that isn't there's a specific turn of phrase or passage that Philip Pullman writes where he talks about like, and she had come up with enough plans to know like not to look at it directly and let it sort of manifest. Like, she's just, and he also describes her as not being imaginative, which I freaking love, because it's not like she's this combination of all wonderful things, adventurous and brilliant. It's like she's a muddy little kid who gets into trouble.
She's a liar.
And she doesn't have the imagination to imagine how things will go wrong. She has the like dogged determination enough, and in some ways just like A to B thought process of like, it'll be fine. I'll get in, I'll free the kids from this like death camp, and then everything will work out.
She has a goal, but she doesn't really have a plan. She's just like, I'll figure it out as I go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's also a little bit of a tyrant.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's like, I've got this bear wrapped around my finger. I could do anything. And Bethlehem like, hold on, whoa. Hey.
There's the Coulter.
Well, hey, like even with the kids in Jordan at the very beginning, she kind of gets a kick out of like telling them really scary stories about the gobblers and being like, yeah, I know this and I survived them one
She
time.
also has a little bit of she like recognizes her privilege and she uses it to her advantage.
Yeah.
Because she's like, I'm a noble and you are not.
She's a contradiction in all the ways that make sense,
Yeah.
especially for a kid.
Yeah.
Just lording over whomever and whatever she can.
Yeah.
I think she's such an interesting like children's book protagonist for all of those reasons. She's not really like supposed to be like a complete paragon of like morality, but she also really has like a super deep sense of right and wrong where it like really counts, and it's literally what separates her from like Mrs. Coulter and like Lord Asriel
From many adults that
Yeah.
we meet in the book.
all the adults. Yeah.
As she goes on her journey, she complicates.
Yeah.
And her priorities have to complicate, and her like confidence grows in ways in terms of her understanding of what she probably should do or needs to do, but like the kind of confidence that she demonstrated in her life at Jordan has to, it's coming of age stuff. She has to sort of morph as the world, meets her.
Yeah.
And as she morphs, she's almost like syncretizing with Pan in a way where the difference between them, I guess, becomes like a lot less pronounced, which is sort of the point, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've sort of worked my way back around to where I started.
Well, I reread some of the like chapter where Lord Asriel kind of like goes through some of the lore with her near the end, right before this recording. And something I noticed was that in the sort of like quotes that he tells from the story of Adam and Eve that have been kind of like modified to incorporate like demons in this alternate world, when their demons like settle into a final form, the wording of it is, when the man and the woman knew their own demons, a great change was upon them. And it's almost like we're getting to know like Pan, like she's like knowing herself.
Yeah.
I like the knowing, especially with all the themes of like asking the questions and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've reached the end of the book, and I knew that I was going to learn a lot by the end, all these secrets, but there's still so many more secrets.
There are so many secrets.
I want to know the secrets.
You should read all the other books.
I know they're going to get into dust more. They
Yeah.
must get into dust more.
Dust
They
is
must get into dust.
They must.
I think the main thing that's really interesting going back to this is even when Asriel explains what he thinks dust is, he still doesn't actually know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the whole crux of all the adults' motivations. Dust. We have to
Yeah.
also save the kids, but mostly dust.
Big air quotes, save the kids.
Well, the Egyptians want to save the kids.
Yeah.
And the gobs want to save the kids. But even at the very end, when Asriel's like, this is what it's all about. And I'm sitting there like, I don't think so. I've gone through this entire book and I still don't understand what dust is. But even more than that, it feels like all these adults have found this particle, this God particle, whatever it is, and they're like, this must mean something. And to me, the reader, I'm like, I don't think it means anything. I think from my perspective, you guys are just obsessing over a natural, it's like if a big organization decided getting your adult teeth is bad and that we should keep our baby teeth. And then they go to extreme lengths, killing kids in order to find a way for us all to keep our baby teeth.
Because
Yeah.
surely once we figure that out,
All the problems will be
suffering.
solved. Yeah, all the problems will
Yeah.
be solved. And then you sit back from an outside perspective and you go, why? Like there's no relation to this, right?
Yeah. It's really interesting because the church, I think, knows, or at least Mrs. Coulter knows, that doing these experiments on kids is really terrible. Because clearly she doesn't want Lyra to go through it. If
And she
really,
hasn't had it done it to herself.
Exactly. If
Even though
she
some
really
of the adults who work there
believed-
have.
if she really believed that this is the way to end suffering, then she would do it, right?
Yeah.
But part of her knows that it's not, but she's in her head justified that getting rid of dust is the way to end bad things. So it's okay to do bad things if eventually it's getting rid of bad things. She has to jump through so many mental hoops
ends
to
justify the
this.
means, but if the ends are things that you kind of imagine for yourself and the means are taking magical knives
like,
to
it feels like
separate
a bunch
children
of-
from their souls.
Yeah, it feels like a bunch of people just latched onto a thing and then dug themselves into so deep of a complicated spiraling hole, and now they can't get out, so they're just digging themselves in deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a line where it talks about, like, I love the bureaucracy in this book. And you get terms like consistorial court of discipline, magisterium, college of bishops, general
Yeah.
oblation board.
You actually have that memorized is astounding to me.
I just, well, when I read these terms, I'm like, oh, this is great. I love how, like,
Yeah, you
what
just
does
rattled
this
those
do?
off. He doesn't have a book in front of him.
I mean, it's in that, like, opening, it's like the first 2 chapters. It's like, let's give you a bunch of esoteric lore about the world. Did you know that the John Calvin of the Protestant Reformation became Pope in this universe? And that's, like, what created this weird system wherein, like, time is a flat circle, like, it looped back on itself and we get the Dark Ages, but different.
Yeah.
But there's, like, it describes that whole, everything with the General Oblation Board being like the magisterium, like creating, like having all these little feelers out there and allowing people to do stuff kind of in their name, but kind of not. And if one of
Yeah.
them turns out to be undesirable, then it can be like, we disavow what that little
Oh, we
tendril
weren't
of ours
actually
was
involved
doing.
in that.
Yeah.
Or we weren't that involved in that. So we weren't responsible.
and they're gone.
Yeah.
Disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they're also funding Lord Asriel in prison just in case he succeeds, and then they
Yeah.
can take credit for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like,
And they're like Palpatine.
Yeah.
I'm funding Mrs. Coulter, but also Lord Asriel. And in the end, I'll kill the Jedi. I mean children. What's happening?
Lord Asriel's perspective on dust is he's sort of more clued into the idea that suffering comes from humans, because he's like, oh, well, like, these terrible things happen because humans are terrible, but they're only terrible because dust, like, I don't know, like, his view is, like, even more convoluted.
he's
Because,
warped.
yeah, because his idea is, like, how do I say this?
He's warped in a way that makes sense to me because, and again, great character work. And it all has to do with the fact that we get to know Lord Asriel through Lyra's eyes, like once at the beginning of the book when he's in person. And then at the end of the book, after we've gotten these stories about him that, again, from her point of view, we're like, oh, wow, what an impressive guy. He like helped the Egyptians in all these different ways, practically and then like politically. And then also he killed Mrs. Coulter's husband when he came
Yeah.
to maybe kill me. And then after he killed him, like point blank, was just like, clean up this mess.
Yeah.
And then we get these other things where it's like, Lord Asriel's kind of, like, once you get to the end and you're like, oh, he's a bad guy, you can look at all the stuff and be
Yeah.
like, yeah, he was always this kind of guy,
Yeah.
wasn't he? Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I figured it out. So Asriel thinks that the cause of human suffering is fear of whatever. So like fear of other people, fear of knowledge mainly is what I think what he's getting at, because literally like the church tried to kill him because they're afraid of what he would discover. And so he's kind of clued in on like human suffering is caused by humans being afraid and like reacting negatively to things. But then his solution is, I will just get rid of the thing that people are afraid of. And you're like,
I'll delete the concept of fear.
yeah,
Huh.
that's literally what he's like. If I get rid of the fear of dust and of death, then humans will have nothing to fear and worry about.
The problem is that every powerful group in his world exists to control people through fear.
Yeah.
Like, why try to keep someone in a
Which is why he
childlike
thinks he's
state
right.
if not
Yeah.
to control them and not let them, gain the autonomy of adulthood?
Yeah, because the main thing is, I think Lyra notes that the nurses are kind of weird because their eyes seem a little bit vacant. And I think even when the surgery is successful, it basically robs people of, maybe if demons are slightly representative of a conscience, it sort of robs them of that knowledge. I mean, literally the knowledge of good and evil if we go Adam and Eve.
The problem, and even this goes back to Lord Asriel, is that nobody in this whole series is actually truly just in search of the truth. Everyone has an agenda, and they're warping their explanation of the truth to just benefit their agenda.
Yeah.
And everybody is just kind of using the children as pawns for their own political stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We have not talked enough about the armored bears. We have not. We have not.
And
There's
there's
too much to get into.
How can we not talk about Yorick Burnison?
There's like a point when Lyra, like every other sentence is like, my dear Yorick, my dear.
She is in love with him.
She's totally, hey, makes sense.
In like a not weird way.
No,
but-
it's like a
I
horse
literally
kid
think
phase.
Yorick is the best father figure she's ever had.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And he gives her a new last name.
Silvertongue.
Yeah. And she basically goes by that for the rest of the series because she's like, my parents suck. I don't want to be Lyra Balakwa anymore.
What a cool name, though.
It is a cool
Silvertongue.
name.
Because she's able to lie to the bears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's literally defined by her ability to lie.
Love it.
Also, like, love that little subplot of Yurfer wants a demon.
Yeah. So
Pretty
it's-
twisted how he like creates a mannequin doll and
Yeah, it
it
was
looks like
pretty
Mrs.
creepy.
Coulter.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Ooh.
whoa, creepy.
And then all the other bears are like, I guess we do that now.
I do
Yeah.
love this whole like weird, I don't even know what to call it, but he's created this very like authoritarian, like twisted regime where nobody knows what's going on and they're just trying to curry favor with him.
I will
Bears,
say,
we're humans.
as
Oh,
soon
okay.
as soon as when Yurfer dies, when Yorick smacks his jaw off, and yeah, and then he's like, "We're gonna tear down everything he built." I was kind of like, "Oh my god!" Like, well, maybe let them like. You don't have to like enforce the way it used to be. Like, just go off the vibes. You know, it was kind of a lot, but
I mean, he did, like, under Yofer's rule, they did trash the place.
yeah,
Like, they didn't clean at all. So they were just, like,
Bird poop
living
everywhere.
in their own waste and in waste of others.
they all had like clothes though that they were wearing instead of armor because they were trying to be more like people, and they all like tear them off, and they're like, we hate.
Yeah,
but
well,
yeah,
they kind of set that up because at one point, Yorick tells Lyra that bears can't be tricked.
mm-hmm.
And there's a demonstration where Lyra tries to fight him and, like, poke a hole through his armor.
She's
and,
like fencing him with a stick.
Yeah, and she can't get an opening. And she kind of comes to the realization that bears can't be tricked, but they can if they're pretending to be human, because humans can be tricked. And so that's why she immediately knows that her plan will succeed when she sees Yofer with his human demon, because she knows he wants to be human, so I can trick him just like I would another human.
Yeah, it was really sad. I didn't know whether to feel sorry for him or whether to feel, I don't know. I felt so many complicated
he has
feelings.
been manipulated by Mrs. Coulter, but
He did kill his father as a
Yeah.
young bear.
But Yorick also killed another bear. It's like there's a lot of.
well, Yorick killed it was slightly in self-defense.
Okay.
Because the bear challenged him to a duel, and Yorick won. But then the bear, because he had been drugged by Yofer, who had been given the drugs by Mrs. Coulter, basically, like, Mrs. Coulter was like, I need a ruler who I can have in my pocket, so I'm going to make sure that the line of succession goes this way. And so she manipulated it so that this bear that Yorick fought was drugged, and so kept fighting past when the fight was over. And so out of self-defense, Yorick had to kill him, but it was still seen as very dishonorable. And that's how he was ousted.
I can see feeling bad for Yofer, but in the end, it's like feeling bad for someone because it's like, oh, you shouldn't be in charge. You gotta
Yeah.
like take some time off and figure yourself out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much of this book is about like being anti-establishment, and Yofer really did try something different. And I kind of respected him for it. I see the error in his ways. He was a murderer. He did many wrong things, and he was kind of forcing it on everyone. But I was like, okay, like,
Yeah, you tried.
yeah, like, I don't know. I felt complicated feelings about it, but I also think that I maybe missed in some of my reading, like some of the context that Victoria like has. I do think some of the bear diplomacy I was a little bit lost in, but I love Yorick.
For what it's worth, so were the bears.
Yeah.
The bears were also lost in their own diplomacy.
I just
Yeah.
love the image of all these like completely bamboozled, baffled, confused bears just standing around wearing their human clothes going like, I don't know what's happening. And then they watch this duel and they go, hooray! We're bears again. Implying, we talked about this before the podcast, but it sort of implies that before Mrs. Coulter's machinations, they were kind of just a bunch of bears just in an area with armor and
Artillery.
artillery. And that was like the extent of their like society. And they just like hunt seals and like do battle and just chill out.
Yeah.
And then Yofer comes along and is like, no, we build a castle now. We wear clothes. And so they go from like armor and gun. That's about it. To like, a full society, and then immediately back down to armor and gun again.
Yeah.
Which on the chart of like animal society, it kind of moves them. It kind of moves them from like
South of Redwall.
Yeah, they go from like a little bit more past Guardians of Ga'Hoole,
Yeah.
right up to Redwall, right back down to Guardians of Ga'Hoole.
Yeah, it's true.
I guess maybe the final reason that I felt bad for Yofer is that reading this book makes having a demon sound so good. Like,
That's fair, yeah. Like, I was like, yeah, I would love to have a demon.
yeah.
Just a little buddy.
When Lyra's like, she meets Yorick and she's like, oh, he doesn't have a demon. Like, when he's alone, he's just alone.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah.
But when he has his armor, he seems okay with it.
Yeah, because he does get himself. He understands himself.
Yeah.
And Yofer clearly doesn't understand himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think basically for bear society, their armor is their representation of a demon. I think Jino hit the nail on the head, which is because Yorick knows exactly who he is, when he has his armor on, he's very strong and resolute and self-confident. But at some point before Lyra meets him, he lost his armor because it was stolen from him.
Yeah.
So that was like kind of the equivalent of losing your demon, because that's very important to him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, having a demon would be pretty sick.
Yeah. Would it be weird for the bears if someone had a polar bear demon?
It's one of those questions where, like, in an animal society, like, they eat animals, and you're like, where does the line blur?
We're animals.
You know? But like, if you're in a
But
society...
I wouldn't eat me.
if you're in a world where every species in the world is sapient, and they all can talk to each other, but you still have predators who, like, need to eat something, like, where does the line blur of, like, who's okay to eat and who's not okay to eat, or is just everyone okay to eat?
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like the wild robot had that problem.
Exactly.
Big time.
And so when you live in a world where people's demons manifest as animals, but some of those animals can, like, look at that and go, hey, what's that about? You know, where's the line?
I guess it's just one of those, like, psychological things where it's like, if you imagine living in this universe and this is the universe, there's, like, less of a cognitive dissonance, because in your mind a demon is as syncretic to, I keep saying syncretic, a demon is as natural and as a part of the equation of what makes a human being as, you know, an animal is to what makes an environment.
Yeah. And to be fair, the bears want human demons. So, like, a human having a bear demon.
They might kind of vibe with that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry, I have an answer to this question.
Oh, okay.
So
Victoria,
I have this book called The Imagination Chamber, which is just sort of like small lore bits from that Philip Pullman decided to put in a book. Like the bears being left-handed thing, it's sort of similar to that, where it's like, it's just a detail about the world that maybe he couldn't fit in to the books, but he was like, I think people should know this. So there's one that says, a demon is not an animal, of course. A demon is a person. A real cat, face to face with a demon in cat form, would not be puzzled for a moment. She would see a human being.
Oh.
I love that.
I also like this one. One of the signs of good sense in someone is when they don't pester their demon to tell them everything, when they're happy to know that their demon has secrets too.
Oh.
That's lovely.
Knowing yourself is also understanding that you don't know yourself.
Yeah. Knowing yourself is knowing that there may be some parts of yourself that you may never understand.
And that's why we call it your inner demons.
Ooh.
Except here it's just a negative comment.
Yeah.
Here
No,
it's
you gotta
outer
make
demon.
friends. Make friends with you.
Yeah.
Wow. Outer demons.
Outer
Well, actually, they get into this in, I think, the third book, maybe starting in the second book. But in our world, because our world, people don't have demons. According to Philip Pullman, in his world, humans still have demons, but they're inside. So at one point, Will, who is from our world, there's something that happens which ejects his demon from inside him.
Oh.
So that's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then there's another character who learns how to see her demon through her experiences in other worlds. So it's very interesting.
So then, in the Golden Compass alternate universe main world that Lyra's from,
Yeah.
is the year like 1997 or whatever? Is the year like equivalent?
I think it's about like, it's the same year.
Right. So
Yeah.
when they jump into quote unquote our world, it's 1997 or
I
whatever.
think if I remember.
Yeah, it's like maybe it's like the Big Bang or something where they all started at the same time, but they've gotten to where they are.
I feel like I remember potentially in the second book, but I might also be confusing it with the show because I haven't read the second book in a while. But I feel like there are moments where Lyra was like curious about technology in like our world.
She's like, oh, you have personal computers and cars and planes and stuff. Wowee.
Like in her world, the extent of technology, I don't think they even have cars yet.
Yeah.
They have carriages and they have blimps and boats.
It's like pseudo steampunk.
Yeah.
Like aesthetically, but not mechanically.
Yeah. But then when she gets to Will's world, she's like, oh, there's cars. I think. Don't quote me on this.
So is this like a reverse isekai?
I mean, I guess it's just an isekai because she's leaving her world.
I mean...
Trapped in an alternate world with myself.
It's an isekai for certain characters.
Yeah.
It's an isekai for certain characters. Yeah.
So isekai is coming from our world to a different world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What is going from a different world to our world?
Enchanted.
Honestly, that works.
That's amazing,
I dig
actually.
that. The opposite
Yeah.
of an isekai is an enchanted.
Well, I guess as we do our slow arcing turn around the drain of finishing an episode, I would ask all of you if you could go to an alternate universe, and that alternate universe had something that was no longer a part of our universe or, was just different from ours. How good would it have to be for you to electrocute the extruded animal soul of a child to get there?
Where are you going?
I thought you were going to ask us what you want.
This is like the ones that walk away from
Omaha.
Omelas?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I thought we were going to talk about what our demons would be too.
So wait, what do you think our demons are?
So what would your demon be, and would
And
you
would Miss
kill it?
Coulter have gotten you?
Yes, because Isabella said that she thinks Mrs. Coulter would have gotten her.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, listen, she offers Tony warm hot chocolate and like...
Okay, Mrs.
That would
Coulter
probably
would
get
have
me
gotten
alone.
me in the exact way that she got Lyra. Like, as I was reading it, I was like, oh, like, I was once vulnerable. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Like in the way she got Lyra, like, oh, you're so smart, you're so pretty, have
Yeah.
some clothes, have some tea, that kind of...
She's like, we're going to go to the north, and women don't usually get to do this. But, like, I do, and I can teach you to get people to respect you, and we're going to be cool like that, and we're going to share little secrets and kind of laugh behind everybody's backs about how we're, like, in the know, and now we have power.
So
I
she
was like,
kidnaps
wow.
you through girl power.
Yes.
She girl bosses
She
her
girl
way into a
bosses.
kidnapping.
She would have
Literally
girl bossed me.
gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss.
Yeah. She's the
Like-
epitome of that.
It was so frustrating to read Lyra's experience in Jordan, and then when Miss Coulter came along, I was like, go with her. And then I was like, no, I've read this before. Yeah.
I did relate because basically, like Lyra, when she grows up in Jordan College, anytime Lord Asriel comes to visit, like she's forced into like really feminine clothes, and
Yeah.
she hates it. She's
Yep.
like, I hate doing this because I'm like, I just want to be like a dirt child, basically.
So
But then
real.
as soon as she meets Mrs. Coulter, she's like, oh, this is like the picture of powerful femininity, and she realizes like maybe I can be feminine and powerful at the same time. And then she starts really liking like they go shopping, and she's like, wow, like these are...
She's like actually learning about it as like an interest of hers because she's given an explanation for
Yeah.
why it's like important
Yeah.
in
yeah,
their
and
society.
she enjoys learning how to mend clothes because she realizes it's like actually like a useful thing. Oh no, that was when she was with Egyptians.
Yeah.
Never mind. Sorry, that was a slightly different thing. But like when she's with Mrs. Coulter, she is like, oh, I really like that the shampoos and body washes smell really nice, and they're like really soft and like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like fruit and floral scented. Whereas at Jordan College, it was probably just like a bar of soap, you know?
And there's nothing wrong with a bar of soap.
But I sort of like related to that, where if you grow up like super like rejecting femininity,
Yeah.
and then you're like, wait, but actually there are some things about femininity that are nice. And then you kind of like meet in the middle eventually.
Personal hygiene.
Yeah. But
I hope that's
think,
not exclusive to femininity.
No,
No.
of course not.
but like,
I gotta go.
There's nothing wrong with a
there's
bar of soap.
nothing. Personal hygiene is important no matter who you are, please. No, but I think similarly to Isabella, I think I would have been drawn in by, like, if I grew up in a college just like surrounded by dusty old books, even though I love books, I think I would be like, ooh, society and parties and like, this is really interesting. And I've never experienced this before. And it's so different from everything that I've ever known.
It's not even just that. It's also like Mrs. Coulter is like helping her read the room.
Yeah.
Mrs. Coulter is teaching her like, this person is talking to this person in this way because of this. And you can tell by their body language. And here's what you want. Like, here's what they want out of them.
Yeah.
Like, it's the power, and Miss Coulter's really good at it. And
it's the power.
yeah, I'm not saying like
Lyra's like, you mean I can do what I'm doing to kids, but like to adults too?
because Lyra's been so powerless her whole life, it would have gotten me.
Yeah.
And I love also the way that we see Lyra come out of it, and I think I have a very similar like way to you, where you're talking about kind of rejecting femininity as a kid, kind of coming into it, finding more of a middle ground. Like, I think that that's like a common arc. And I think Lyra is a wonderful picture of that.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful watching her go from being like a dirt child, born to be a dirt child, forced to be a scholar in college. And then, I can actually be like upper class girl boss. No, I am now a working class person of the people. Now I'm on a boat and I'm doing sailor things. I'm so cold, stinky furs. And her picking up different skills along the way.
Yeah.
And using them like on every step of her journey.
Yeah. The last thing I want to throw into this, I guess, to kind of tie back to, I know we're kind of wrapping up, but like Miss Coulter, I don't think is like, as we're talking about, she kind of doesn't like herself. The way that she dresses and like the way that she exists is not like an expression of like her vibes.
Yeah.
Like it's all very calculated.
Yeah.
And so what she's really teaching Lyra is she's not saying like, this has to be you. She's saying like, I'm doing this to get this result in a world that is built against me. And I'm going to teach you also how to like get a result in a world that's built against you.
Yeah.
I think that's what I wanted to say that I didn't know the words for.
Yeah. No, that's great. Mrs. Coulter is such a fascinating character for sure.
I know we keep saying like girl power and girl boss kind of like a semi-ironic way, but this is like the core of that concept.
Yeah.
Like beyond all of like the memes on one side and sort of like the overexploited like loudness of the other side, like the core of it is just like the world's against us. These are the strategies we must use to survive.
Yeah. And the fact that everyone is so aware of like their girlhood, like the moment they enter a room and are like against them for it and like bar them from so many things, like makes them really have to like incorporate it into their strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All those skills come together when you manipulate the monarch of a bear kingdom into
Yeah.
dueling to his death.
Oh yeah.
Just a little sprinkling of a coup, just a little light regicide there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But what would our demons be?
I think mine would either be a cat, because I think I have a similar personality.
But here's the thing, though, because it's like you can assign a demon to yourself, but in this world, more often or not, the demon is assigned to you. And you have to figure out why, right?
Yeah. I also think a turtle would be a great option.
You don't get to go down a list.
He's like, you have to be assigned one, and you're like, I want a turtle.
I think this
Flip
is
it through a catalog.
Yeah.
This would be nice.
Okay. You guys can. What do you think?
Short-haired, like getting real specific to the breed,
with a little white star on the forehead.
There was one person whose demon was like an autumn-colored cat.
Yes.
And I was like, that's beautiful.
Farter Corum.
Yeah.
Cat feels like
It is kind of cliche.
it is, but it also like it fits. Just like anyone who's a cat person will say cat because cats fit people so well. Like there's such an easy connection there, and anyone who's a dog person will say dog because there's an easy connection there. I don't know, like because Victoria, you're very hardworking, sometimes too hardworking. You're very practical.
I'm a beaver.
Damn.
10 points for Isabella. Isabella, you win the episode.
Sorry. I totally derailed. It's because I saw a beaver when I was in Montreal and I was really excited about it.
Just like kind of loose.
No.
Walking the streets,
I
beaver.
saw it at the Biodome of Montreal. There's a beaver and he was just like gnawing on wood. And I was like, wow.
He's doing the thing.
Yeah.
But beavers are very industrious, and they're also incredibly important to their ecological niche.
They shape so much of the world around them.
And they're so shape, you know?
They are very good shape.
They're like womp, but then they're like whip at the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, listener. You know how beavers shape?
Hardworking and practical. I'm like Victoria's boxer. Victoria's the horse on the
I don't
Whalen
wanna be
Productions
a
logo.
No.
Okay, but a horse would
I don't
be
want
kind
to
of
turn into glue.
a horse would be super powerful, but also incredibly inconvenient.
Yeah.
Because now
Yeah.
you can't go into like small areas.
Yeah.
How would that even work? Like, the horse has to be in a stable, so you'd have to, like, pick a house that's, like, right next to the stable.
Do demons poop?
I don't think they poop or eat. Do
Yeah.
Yeah,
they?
they don't.
So
Yeah.
it's like the world's
They're not,
best
like,
horse.
true animals.
You could ride your demon.
I do
Yeah.
feel like I know there was a line in the beginning where like the kids were trying to make a demon as ugly and big as possible in their little fight against each other. Like they were showing off. I think your demons can't be that big. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh,
Maybe I'm
that's-
wrong.
From practical sense, that makes me feel better.
Because I think the biggest we get is like
I think dolphin is
Probably got to be up there.
dolphin.
one of the biggest.
Yeah,
Lion.
cloud leopard, lion. Lion, yeah, we do get lion.
I am still just imagining like someone with a giant blue whale just like just has to live on a like not on the coast, has to live on a boat in the middle of the
Just
ocean.
by existing, it's like deep enough that you're in constant pain because you can't get that close to it.
No.
So if
That
you
would
have
suck.
clinical depression, your demon will be
Oh no.
Oh my gosh.
I'm realizing I don't know enough animals.
Yeah, right.
It's really
properly
hard.
assigned.
Yeah.
It's like where's my zoo tycoon knowledge
We
when
don't-
I
well,
need it?
maybe we just have to take a quiz.
Yeah.
You gotta take one of those BuzzFeed quizzes.
Yeah.
Does that exist?
Probably.
It's got to
Not
be.
BuzzFeed, but like one of those like U-quiz things.
But how many animals have they accounted
That's true.
for? And what are they
There's so
ascribing
many
to
animals.
each animal?
Like the animal that Pan settles into, I literally had to look it up. I was like, I don't know what this is.
Oh, I freaking love those things.
Yeah.
Okay, but purely off vibes. This just came to me. Purely off vibes. I hope you're not insulted by this. Puffin.
I like puffins. They're funny.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Puffin.
Okay, I need the explanation though.
Puffin. Okay, so
I did also see puffins in Montreal. They're pretty
puffins
great.
they're incredibly loyal.
Oh.
They are very hardworking because they have to work really hard to fly, but they're very good fishermen. Fisher
Oh.
puffins. Fisher people.
Oh my gosh, because Victoria's always bringing in that fresh caught fish.
Yeah. They seem very cozy. They're very homey. You know, because they have their
Mm.
little burrow and they're always kind of like in there, you know? I don't know. Puffin seems,
Puffins are. I think having any bird as a demon, I'd be pretty happy with.
yeah.
Because then I'd get to like get the feeling of flying without actually flying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I accept this. Thank you.
I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of artists had birds.
Yeah.
Because it's not like a dolphin where it's like, no, you are attached to the sea and like there's a nomadic aspect to this. It's like, well, you know, you could have a bird that, you know, flies and gets his flights of fancy, but it still comes back to nest somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's got to land a little bit.
Okay, Michael.
As you study me, I study you.
Like an animal that's very introspective. Which I don't know what that means for an animal.
A puffin.
Michael, you're a puffin. I hope puffin's okay.
No, puffin's great. I didn't know that much about puffins until you explained, and I was like, okay, I see the vision.
I also don't know much about puffins, but I really like puffins.
Puffins are great.
I think they're really cool. And they're also just very shape.
Yeah.
Some animals are not very shape, you know?
So far, I'm getting
It's giving silhouette.
all the animals that I'm affiliated with are hardworking and shape.
That, no. Oh, no.
I'm just joking.
I'm really
giving you-
bummed.
Victoria
Totally.
is a very hardworking shape.
Thank you.
I'm not
I
doing
feel
great.
like Michael would be an intelligent, like,
a fox.
Yeah, well, you're
'Cause
already going wrong
the-
with intelligent.
no, I meant like in terms of introspective and emotionally intelligent.
Aw.
Yeah. And then also like a really like group oriented animal.
Elephant.
Ooh.
That's so inconvenient, but it does fit.
On the 405, move out of the way!
That's the other like qualification though, is it has to be small, which does limit you significantly when you're
Yeah.
picking something.
Honestly, Gino, I was like looking at you and I was like, I just see like a mouse.
I was about to say, I was like, what if it was a rat?
I'm honored.
I
Rats and mice are
I
awesome.
straight up see, yeah. Or
I love a little animal.
I love the parts of the book where Pan goes in her pocket.
Yeah.
It makes me really want mine to be really little.
Like, it says he transforms into like the smallest mouse possible. I was like,
It feels
maybe like it doesn't have to be the platonic idea of a mouse. I'm sure there's a specific small mouse-like thing we could find, but I think
as opposed to the romantic idea of a mouse.
the romantic idea of a mouse is like that cartoon, like big ears and like smooth face. The platonic idea is just little like scrunkly.
And then I don't know Isabella remotely as well as I've come to know Victoria and Jino, which in and of itself isn't like the deepest parts of your soul. But I get butterfly vibes.
Thank you.
I get specifically like insect, but like not
a
like
praying mantis, because you can do martial arts.
Is it crazy that I was going to say praying mantis?
I'm a genius.
Actually, so insects are like my favorite thing. I have a notebook of drawing of bugs that I can show you after this recording. So I actually feel very red right now. It's kind of crazy.
Soul read.
And I was going to say grasshopper. Because I've always, I don't even know what it is, but I've always just really liked them. And I kind of like how they just like hurl their bodies. Like, I love that they just kind of like put it all into one jump and they just kind of, and they land where they're going to land.
I feel like you have that energy.
You're also on the move.
Yeah.
And they can fly.
I would like to kind of just have like cricket grasshopper energy. Because they're also very like calm and then they kind of explode, and I just am a fan of that. And I want it to be in my pocket on my shoulder. They're pretty. Like I like that. I like that guy.
Cute.
Yeah. And whenever you get like into very crowded situations, you undergo like physical morphological changes and become like a locust version of yourself.
Yes.
And just start absolutely like demolishing the countryside.
Just terrorizing the people.
But I think I would always be afraid for my life if I had a bug. That's why
that's fair. Yeah.
Well, I kind of wonder how resilient the demons are, because I don't know if a small...
In the show, like the reporter who has a butterfly, like I'm pretty sure the monkey like crushes the butterfly.
Someone kills it in their fist.
In their hand, yeah.
And then she dies.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Spoilers.
That is rough.
Yeah. Well, she dies in the book, so
yeah, that's why
they just show how she dies. Or I guess they don't...
They say she's never going to work as a journalist again.
She's never seen again in the book, except for that one. So it's like, she probably died.
Well, maybe that's just that then.
It's worth it.
I was going to say
grasshopper.
For Michael, like a meerkat
Oh.
or something, but like meerkat, their whole thing is they're like super vigilant, and and I don't think that quite fits.
I am a little vigilant.
But they're like almost obsessive, you know.
I can be a little obsessive.
if you like meerkat's good, but the other animal I was thinking of was wombat.
Wombat.
Because they just feel wise to me.
I wish I knew you guys enough to like give a read.
Well, they're wombats. They're not gonna
spend most of their time in the hole in the ground.
Actually, a group of wombats is known as a wisdom.
What the heck? That's wild.
That's so beautiful.
Also, fun wombat fact: they don't have a lot of natural defenses, but one of their main ones is that their butt's really thick. So when they're being chased,
I have been told.
Chased by a predator, they'll dive into their burrow, but they'll plug the hole with their butt, and the predator can't get past that butt.
That's
like,
wisdom.
They're like,
these
I don't know what to do with
abused
this.
wombat butts.
They just got a real strong butt,
great.
so the predator will just give up because they can't handle it.
Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Nostalgia Club and going on this wild, wacky adventure with us. Thank you, Isabella, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was the best thing. I've been looking forward to this for weeks.
Yeah.
I drove 2 hours to be here, and I love you guys, and I will always be back. And this was a really great time.
Woo.
We're so glad you're here. We're so glad to have read this book.
And where can people find you?
My public Instagram that has only like my work stuff on it, which I guess if you, I don't know, filmmaker person, podcast person, it's Isabella G. Miller 77.
Do you still have your Instagram where you do podcast recommendations?
I kept that up for the better half of a year.
Okay.
And then
Pretty good.
took a little hiatus. and it's still on hiatus, but I have been meaning to resume it.
Ooh.
So and this podcast is on there. So if you want to read my review of Nostalgia Club, look up.
A very unbiased
It's
review.
eviscerating.
Yeah, I said some unkind things. It's glowing. Yeah, I only talk positively about podcasts on there because I kind of just.
Yeah.
I feel like when you work in podcasts, everybody's like, oh, what are you listening to? What should I listen to? And then I figured I should just have a list somewhere I could hand to someone.
Yeah.
So that's what that Instagram is. If you want to know
It's great.
the taste, go to isabellas.podcast.recs, R-E-C-S.
We'll leave
on
the link
Instagram.
in the show notes too.
I myself took a recommendation from one of the posts, and I was
Ooh.
not disappointed.
What was it?
I forget. No, How to Be a Girl.
I love that one.
That was a really lovely one.
Yeah, I've cried at so many episodes of that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a
I've
great
been
one.
meaning to listen to some of the ones that you've recommended too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's everything from fiction podcasts to narrative nonfiction to chat shows on there.
Ooh.
Comedy chat shows. So
Yeah, this is the podcast connoisseur here.
yeah, and
Yeah.
the whole thing of it was like the reason I took a break from posting is like I only put something on there if I would like emphatically beg a friend to listen to these. So it's all like my favorites.
Yeah.
And I wasn't finding any that were like really inspiring me towards the end of the year. I was kind of burning out. I want to get back to it because I feel like I found some new favorites where I would be like, you have to listen to this. Let me text it to you. So
Yeah.
like that's what that list is.
Well, we'll be keeping an eye out.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can leave us a comment in the episode comments on your podcast platform of choice or YouTube. Wow, doing my best here. Or you can email us at nostalgiclubpodcast@gmail.com or leave us a message on Instagram at nostalgiclubpodcast. We also have Twitter, Blue Sky, Tumblr, Instagram for Mouse Knight Studios at Mouse Knight Studios. And you can also support the show by donating to our Ko-fi.
Yeah.
Woo!
Donate to the Ko-fi. Get them lunch. They're awesome.
I love lunch.
Yeah. And until next time.
Stay dusty.
Stay dusty. Oh, that's
Ooh,
good.
That's a good one.
There's got to be more.
No, I think
No, I
that's
think
it.
that's the one.
Until next time, befriend your demons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.